Hello, buddy. All right. Well, today is Monday, December 16th, 2024. Of course, 9 days away from Christmas. And let's see, I think we got from this point about 15 more days of 2015 to go here before we're done with 15 more days of 2024 that we're done with the. So I hope everybody had a good weekend. Hope you all had a chance to check out last night's historical comic retrospect. We had quite a bit of fun time looking over some, taking a break from the superhero stuff and going more with some, some comedy stuff. We did have some actions. I mean, we did actually even read a Buck Rogers story. So with that, before of course I talk about what's on tap for tonight, I'm gonna give people a chance to come in. I hope everybody's having having a, as I said, had a good weekend and has a good start to the week here. If you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here. That'd be um, appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I'll try to answer the questions my ability. So let's see. Let's see. What am I thinking of here? See. Um, all right. So, like I said, we're just waiting for people, waiting to see if we can get some more people to show up here before we um, before we get started. Let's see. Top Cat, the unbelievable Top Cat. His close friends get to call him TC, provided you do it with dignity. Top Cat, he's the undisputed leader of the gang. He's a pip, he's a hope, he's a championship. He's the most tip top cat. Da 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 da. He's a tip, he's a hot, he's a championship. He's the most tip top cat. Da da da. All right, so with that, let's see. All right. So as I said, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing this stream. See if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, with that being said, let's talk about what's on tap for tonight. So, we are going to go over one article tonight, actually from MeTV Tunes. And now I kind of knew this because I knew at least one person that, but apparently more of them than most of us knew. Actually, I'm sure many of us know a number of remember a number of the voice actors that we grew up with. You know, like Mel Blanc, like Gene Vanderpill, like Don Messick. We know these names. You know, Now, and it's come to my attention, with the article we're going to cover tonight, that apparently a lot of them came from radio. A lot of them actually came from now. Does kind of make sense because before there was, of course, television and and an alternative, it's kind of more of a home alternative to going to the movies. You'd often hear people on radio programs and stuff like that, and a number of the one person I did know of who came from radio and became somewhat of a pretty well known voice actor, more for narration and of course Space Ghost, was Gary Owens, the late great Gary Owens. But as I saw when I was looking up articles over the weekend here, well, I wasn't really looking up articles. What I was doing was looking at some other stuff and just happened to peek in on one of the stories on MeTV Tunes and saw that they had written an article about how some of the some of the voice actors and actresses that we knew from over the years had actually come from radio, and I found that interesting. So we'll be going over that article tonight, and we're going to be doing a little bit more of an extensive wrestling wrap up tonight because there was a big story that came out on Friday. Of course, the wrestling wrap up is going to be the usual stuff. You, for the most part, with of course getting caught up on what happened, and but there was a real big story that I do have some comments I want to make on due to the controversy. But we'll have we'll of course be going over the article from MeTV Tunes. Then we'll be doing a wrestling wrap up, and then we will be doing, of course, this day in Neat History. So, with that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started? Then let me grab the MeTV Tunes article here. All right, so cartoons saved the radio star. Well, video killed the radio star, and cartoons brought them back to life. Article published on December 13th, 2024, which I believe was last Friday by MeTV Toon staff. So there are some pictures of some people that you may not have seen their pictures before, but their voices were probably well known to many people. So let's get into this article then. Let's get into this article. And as I said, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the screen, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. I'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here that we talking about grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, with that being said, let's get into this. Video Killed the Radio Star is a song we all love, but what if we told you that video, specifically the golden age of animation, saved the careers of many radio stars? Before television was popular, radio dramas were all the rage. From the 1920s to the 1940s, radio shows were a leading form of entertainment and employed plenty of actors, many forming troupes based around radio stations. Yeah. Which we talked about. In fact, if you've seen some of the golden age of animation cartoons, like Tom and Jerry, I know specifically Tom and Jerry is one reminder I see a lot, where you see a radio in the midst of the living room as opposed to a television set. And, because TV people, not everybody had TV until like the 60s, even though they had it on the East Coast, in the 40s. But anyways, by the 1950s, the BBC was employing 50 voice actors just for radio dramas, but that industry was quickly shaken by television becoming widely available. At the same time as radio plays were dying, the golden age of animation was just getting started, providing many voice actors the opportunity to continue their career in an exciting new way. So, which radio stars went on to voice your favorite cartoon characters? Well, we're about to find that out, aren't we? Let's see. See if anybody's saying anything yet. Nope. All right. Jean Vanderpill. Wilma Flintstone started on the radio. Vanderpill started her radio career in 1939, and that was 85 years ago. For those of you who may not know, and appeared on programs like The Halls, The Halls of Ivy, and Father Knows Best. It was on The Halls of Ivy where she met future Flintstones collaborator B. Benaderet. Of course, Jean Vanderpeel, aside from, of course, being Wilma Flintstone, she also provided the voice of Rosie the Robot, and you could hear her voice in a few other Hanna-Barbera cartoons as well. I believe she was Ma Bear in the Hillbilly Bears. I do know that much. So you could hear, her voice and a few other things. So, and that's what she looked like in real life there. So, B. Benaderet. Speaking of B. Benaderet, she began her radio career in 1926 at San Francisco KFCR. 1926. I believe she was born in 1906, so she's about 20 years old when she got started. She did a little bit of everything: acting, singing, writing, and producing. While originally trying to become a dramatic actress, working in radio helped Benaderet realize she really belonged in comedy. Some of her most popular radio shows were the Jack Benny program and My Favorite Husband. In 1936, she was recruited to join Orson Welles' Mercury Theater Company. She relocated to Hollywood. This new position allowed her to work with the comedy actors who would later shape her career, like Lucille Ball, of course, I Love Lucy fame, Meredith Willson, and yes, Jean Vanderpeel, who we just talked about. Among B. Benederet's um, voice credits, cartoons, of course, probably most people remember her best as the first Betty Rubble on Flintstones before being replaced in 1964 by, I believe it was Ginny Johnson or Jerry Johnson. I believe, I'm not 100% sure. She also, believe it or not, she originally voiced Grant before June Foray took over the role of Granny in some of Granny's earliest appearances for Looney Tunes. B. Benaderet also provided the voice not only of Granny but of a few of the elderly women portrayed in Looney Tunes. So you can hear her quite a bit in a lot of the Warner Brothers stuff there. Just some things to take into consideration. Okay, so moving on. Mae Quetzel, who we've of course been talking about quite a bit lately. We've of course covered a couple of articles just specifically on her in the last few days, over the last week or so. Quetzel's early career in vaudeville led to radio opportunities before she hit it big as Betty Boop. But even after beginning her career in animation, she often went back to radio for shows like Betty Boop's Frolics and Popeye the Sailor Man. She also performed in radio shows in tandem with her animation career, starring in The Green Hornet, Perry Mason, Land of the Lost, and many more. Actually, I didn't know she was in Land of the Lost. That's actually a little bit of a surprise to me, but with that being said, of course, Mae Quetzel, of course, when we did cover her the other day, we talked about. Of course, she was one of four women to voice Betty Boop. She also was like the longest running voice for Olive Oyl initially from like 1934 to 1938, and then again from 1942 until like the 1960s. So we talked about that. She also did a number of other characters for Paramount that we talked about, including Little Audrey. She did a few, of course, as many women do. She did a few kind of one-off like usually little boy character, prepubescent boy characters, you know, in series like Modern Madcaps and all that. So, anyways, moving on to the next, June Foray, who we mentioned earlier here, born in, of course, 1917. June Foray's first radio role came to her when she was 12 years old. So, probably 1929, 1930, around there. In a local radio drama, she later joined the WBZA Players and starred in her own radio show, Lady Make Believe. But she also performed on the Buster Brown program, Lux Radio Theater, and the Jimmy Durante Show. Now, of course, for many of us, we remember June Foray as being. She took over the role of as I mentioned earlier. She took over the role of Granny from Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes Merry these Warner Brothers. She also lent her voice to a number of Hanna-Barbera characters, including Granny from Precious Pup. I do remember one specifically. I know in Warner Brothers she also portrayed Witch Hazel's voice. Let's see. Who else? I'm trying to think of some others she's done. I know she's been in a few things though. I think she might have even been Winsome Witch in on for Hanna-Barbera as well. So anyways, moving on to the next person. Arthur Q. Bryan. Now this name may not be as familiar to people, but but Arthur Q. Bryan, up until his passing in 1959, was the voice of Elmer Fudd. From Elmer's introduction in like 1940-41 until 1959, Arthur Q. Bryan portrayed his voice. Probably his main. Arthur Q. O'Brien was the voice of Elmer Fudd, which I just mentioned, but his other most famous character was Dr. Gamble on Fibber, McGee, and Molly. A popular radio comedy, Bryan's first position in show business was as a singer for WGBS, which I believe is a station in Boston, in 1926. From singing, Bryan also picked up radio positions as an announcer and as a regular talk show talent, like on the Grouch Club. The Grouch Club. That sounds interesting. The Grouch Club. It's probably long before Oscar the Grouch, though. I'd take it. Let's see. He appeared in some short films made by colleagues on the Grouch Club, which got Bryan discovered for Elmer Fudd. While voicing Fudd, Bryan continued acting in radio shows such as Great Gildersleeve, The Charlotte Greenwood Show, and Richard Diamond, Private Detective. Additionally, he played Clarence the Guardian Angel in the radio performance of Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. All right. Don Messick. Of course, everybody knows his voice. They even mentioned in the first thing, Scooby and Scrappy Doo here. We'll get into his voice credits. But before he was Scooby and Scrappy Doo, Messick was a radio star. But he had a bit of a rockier start than his contemporaries. When he was 15, he auditioned for the program manager of WBOC and was given his own one-man show. Messick was an aspiring ventriloquist, so the show was mostly impressions and sound effects. After a year on the air, Messick tried bringing the show to a bigger radio station in Baltimore, and he was turned down due to his Baltimore accent. While finishing high school and trying to work on his accent, Messick's father died in a tragic electric power line accident Messick then joined the Army Special Forces during World War II, and after the war, he got his big radio break playing Raggedy Andy and Farmer Seedling on the Raggedy Ann Show. From there, he was quickly discovered by animator Tex Avery, who needed a voice actor for Droopy Dog. So now, before Bill Thompson took over, more or less became the longtime voice of Droopy, Don Messick filled in. But among some of course, Scooby and Scrappy Doo was talked about here. Don Messick among some of the other roles. He had a number of roles, of course, on Transformers. Like, I know he was Ratchet, he was Gears. Ratchet and Gears come to mind for Transformers. Let's see. I know he was in a number, aside from Scooby and Scrappy Doo, he had a number of different roles for Hanna-Barbera, including Ranger Smith and Boo Boo and Yogi Bear. Let's see. And he, of course, did some work for, as we said, for like MGM as well. Really mentioned. Let's see. The next one here, of course, is Alan Reed. Mr. Fred Flintstone himself. Reed's radio career began in 1930 under a different stage name, Teddy Bergman. It's unclear when he switched from Teddy Bergman to Alan Reed, but he acted in a number of radio shows, including starring in his own shows, Fat Staff's Fables and Joe Palooka. Now, as some of you may know, if you've come on to if you've checked out some of my some of the historical comic retrospects, you probably know that Joe Palooka was a popular comic strip throughout the golden age of comics back in the 30s and 40s. Basically about kind of a dim-witted boxer with a manner, featured much in quality comics, feature funnies and then feature comics. Anyways, as we continue on here, unlike the other actors on the list, he stayed on radio while trying out stage, television, and film roles. After 23 years in radio, Reed's first voice acting role was in 1985 for one of the dogs in Lady and the Tramp. And then his big break was playing Fred on the Flintstones in 1960, which he played for the next 17 years until his unfortunate passing in 1977. He was a voice of, and I know, and again, I know why I don't specifically know which roles. I think they were one-offs here and there. He also did some other work for Hanna-Barbera as well on some of their other shows. I do remember seeing his credit in at least one of the I think maybe Adam Ant's show, but known primarily as the first voice of Fred. Of course, if you've been watching the "'Tis the Season for Tunes" specials on Saturdays on MeTV Tunes, you'll hear his voice, of course, on A Christmas Flintstone, the 1964 Christmas special episode of the Flintstones. With, of course, fellow voice actors, radio stars, Gene Vanderpill and Mel Blanc. We'll get to Mel Blanc in a couple moments here. Penny Singleton. Again, the name itself may not ring as much of a bell, but hey, Carrie. Thanks for popping in. Hey, Mike. Hopefully you enjoy the show here. Catching some of this history here. So Penny Singleton, the voice of Jane Jetson, got her big break as Blondie from the Blondie comic strips. While she started off playing Blondie in the 1938 film, she reprised the role in a 1939 radio series that lasted until 1950. So, wow, 11-year career there for that one role. And look, when you look at her, yeah, I can see her playing Blondie or a blonde character, obviously, being that she is blonde. Kind of funny because she's blonde in real life and played a redhead in cartoons with Jane Jensen, red or auburn haired color. Then also in 1950, she got her own radio show, the Penny Singleton Show, after a supporting role on the Quick Draw McGraw Show, which I did not know she was a part of. Singleton was cast as Jane Jetson on The Jetsons, a role she played from 1962 until 1990. Yeah, so she played that role not just in the original run of the Jetsons in the mid 60s, there from I think 62 to 64 or 65, but also when they of course did the New Adventures of the Jetsons in the 80s, where they added Orvity to the cast, and then of course for the Jetsons movie, like the Jetsons Meet the Flintstones and Rockin' with Judy Jetson. Before I do continue on here, I do need to step away from them for a moment, take care of something here, but I'll be right back. I'll put some music on to keep you guys entertained, and when I come back, I'll finish the article off here. Let's see. Oh, yeah, there's something here. Oh yeah. I'll be right back. All right, sorry about that. Anyways, let's get back to this. So, of course, another one of yeah. Speaking of the Jetsons, one of course Penny Singleton's co-stars in that show, Janet Waldo. Speaking of the Jetsons, Janet Waldo, the voice of Judy Jetson, also originally began her career in radio. Her first few film roles were went uncredited, but Waldo's big break came in the form of a role on Lux Radio Theater. After dozens of supporting radio roles, she starred in Young Love and led an impressive 8-year run as a title character on Meet Corliss Archer. Corliss Archer, I believe, is another comic book character. And it did seem like a lot of the comic book characters of the time were being made into radio dramas, to radio shows as well. Waldo was asked to return to the character for the film version, but she was 33 and didn't want to play a teenager on screen. But as she pivoted to television, she found success playing a teenager again on the Jetsons. Maybe she just didn't want to, being that she was 33, she's kind of a woman, obviously, an adult woman. She probably thought it was a little weird to be playing a teen. That's possible. Now, of course, aside from Judy Jetson, of course, some of Janet's other roles include like Floral Rug from the Hillbilly Bears. Let's see. I know she actually was Penelope Pitstop in Wacky Races and the Perils of Penelope Pitstop. So she lent her role quite a bit to Hanna-Barbera. There's, of course, the Jetsons was also a Hanna-Barbera production. And she lived a pretty long life too. I think she lived well into her. I think she lived to about 90, only passing away like I think just a few short years ago. But anyways, as we continue on here, let's see as we go down. Mel Blanc, who I mentioned earlier. It's hard to imagine Mel Blanc before Looney Tunes, but his career started in radio. At 19, Blanc um, was cast on The Hoot Owls, voicing multiple characters. He co starred and co produced a local radio show with his wife, Estelle, Cobweb and Nuts. After moving to Hollywood, Blanc appeared on other radio shows, including the Jack Benny program, which made him a standout star and led to his own CBS radio show, The Mel Blanc Show, where he performed over 50 impressions and played all of the characters. He continued to perform on the radio programs while being the main voice actor of Looney Tunes until 1956. Now, mind you too, um, even before Warner Brothers signed him to the exclusive contract in '41, he had some roles in he actually was the first voice of Woody Woodpecker. Not only was he the first voice of Woody Woodpecker, but they would use his intro throughout the 40s. Where you see Woody like pecking through the wood. You have Woody Woodpecker. You have pecking through the wood and pecking his name on it, and go ah. His Woody's iconic laugh of ah ah ah. The Blanc originated that. So he was that. I think he lent his voice to Droopy at one point, just like Don Messick did. Of course, everybody knows that he was pretty much just about all the male characters, maybe with the exception of Elmer. Well, I think after well, actually, no, because they said up until 1956, but I think though even after that he was still a lot of the main character. But he was he's pretty much almost all the male male. He might have taken over Elmer after Brian's passing, but of course we know him, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Foghorn Leghorn. Basically, again, he was just about every male character, including Tweety Bird in in Looney Tunes. And after and then of course in 1960 he got the role of Barney Rubble in the Flintstones. So his Barney Rubble in the Flintstones, Elroy Jetson in the Jetsons. Oh yeah, that does remind me. Don Messick in that was Astro as well. So yeah, so just a lot of these people. And as I mentioned earlier too, one other guy who came from radio went into the animation world was Gary Owens. He was known for his radio career. And I would and GJ ad speak there. Let me see. I guess just let's see. The Hatings on October 7th. Don't know exactly what you're talking about there. What does blatant mean? Blatant means obvious or just straightforward. January 3rd is a bad day in general, Mike. Okay. Don't know why you'd say that, but anyways, I didn't even mention anything about January 3rd, but anyways, yeah, so let's see. think more here, and we're done there. But yeah, so, but as I was saying though, oh yeah, I remember what I was saying now. Gary Owens came from radio. For those of you who may not remember, Gary Owens provided the voice of Space Ghost for Hanna-Barbera, and not just in Space Ghost and Dino Boy, but I think he even reprised a role for Space Ghost Coast to Coast in the late 90s, early 2000s for Toonami. And I think you can hear his voice work on I think he might have even been the narrator for, well, no, actually that was somebody else. Never mind. But I know he did a few voices as well. So, with that being said, then, Sentai is going no good. Oh, here we go again. They made another terrible dub that really peed me off. Well, I haven't really seen anything new from them in a while, newsworthy wise. So, it can't be too bad though, because, again, nobody's really talking about it. But, and I guess is another thing for another day there. So, anyways, as I said, we're gonna move right into, the wrestling wrap up, because there's a major story that came out on Friday here that I do want to get into. So we're gonna start off by looking at some TNA news. Of course, TNA this past Friday from Center Stage in Atlanta had its I believe Jade was involved in it. Yeah, Jade Saxton. Well, I mean, she's not a bad voice actress. And anyways, so yeah, so we're gonna start off by talking in the wrestling wrap up here, talking about Friday's the TNA's the Final Resolution pay per view. Now, of course, first off, just the pre-show featured a couple of matches in which JDC defeated Leon Slater, with it getting his foot on the feeling rope. But in an interview segment afterwards, as Leon Slater was being asked about his match with JDC came out and basically kind of tried to offer him a spot in the system. So we'll see how that plays out. He said, well, trying to, the system being the faction that JDC belongs to, with Moose and Moose, Eddie Edwards, and Brian Myers. And then Frankie Kazarian defeated Jonathan Gresham, continuing his momentum, as he, of course, is the championship for the gold holder right now, as he does have a shot that he can utilize anytime for the TNA World Title, anytime he wishes to cash that in. So, we got that, and then of course, and then getting to the main TNA Final Resolution pay per view. There's again, we'll get to the main, one of the things they're talking about. So Moose retained the X Division title. Retained the X Division title over Kushida, nearly having his arm broken in the process, as Kushida locked on, had at one point the Chimera lock, or as he calls it, his version of the hoverboard lock, locked in on Moose for a while. That Moose eventually came back and did defeat Kushida. The Rascals continued gaining momentum in the tag division as they in a three-way tag team match they defeated PCO and Sammy Callahan and Jake Something's partner Hammerstone was, for whatever reason, I haven't heard why this happened or what happened with this, but apparently Hammerstone, who had been teaming with Jake Something for the past month or so here, was unable to make the event for some reason. So Ace Austin defeated Trent Seven. The match between Jordan Grace and Rosemary went to a no contest with the return of Tessa Blanchard to TNA. I'll talk a little bit more about that after I finish going through the roster here, because that in of itself is pretty controversial because of what happened, what caused Tessa Blanchard to leave TNA in the first place about almost 5 years ago. In the number one contendership match, 4-way match for the TNA World Title, Joe Hendry defeated Josh Alexander, Steve Macklin, and Mike Santana to earn another shot at Nick Nemeth's world title. Masha Slamovich retained the TNA Knockouts world title over Tasha Steelz in a Falls Count Anywheres match, truly continuing to establish herself as the top woman in the Knockouts division. In a tables match, the Hardys, Jeff and Matt Hardy, retained the TNA World Tag Team titles over the System's Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers, in which the Hardys have basically said this was the System's last chance. So, as sometimes happens, you go down, and of course, in a interview segment, after the show, of course, the Rascals had called out the Hardys for a title shot as well. And then the main event saw Nick Nemeth defeat AJ Francis to retain the TNA World title. Now, the one thing I did want to talk about from all this, before I go on to some other, WWE had its Saturday night's main event, and of course AEW had Collision and continuation. But before we get into all of that, there's something that now, as I told you, the big story from TNA this weekend came from the fact that Tessa Blanchard made her return to TNA, which many thought chances of Tessa Blanchard coming back to a major company were slim at best. Slim at best. Because what happened was, back in 2020, when she was on top of the world in TNA, she was the TNA World title. I mean, she was a former Knockouts World Champion, but she also, and at the time she was let go, or actually it wasn't even that she was the TNA World Champion when the pandemic went down, and due to travel restrictions, she couldn't come to TNA because she'd also been working Mexico, I believe, and working some other shows. But because of travel restrictions, she was unable to make some of the TNA shows. And one of the things was that they wanted her to return the belt, and she wouldn't, and that led to her firing. Well, during her time there, towards the end of her time, she made a tweet talking about how women need to support each other, which garnered some backlash from some of her coworkers because the parent came out with some pretty nasty allegations. According to Allison Kay, who, of course, was Sienna in TNA, but also many folks know her under the name Alison Kay. Former two-time NWA World Women's Tag Team Champion, Marty Bell. There, she came out and said that she saw during a show in Japan. She actually saw. Tessa Blanchard spit at and use racial slurs towards another wrestler. And then after that, three current WWE stars, Chelsea Green, Gigi Dolan, and Isla Dawn, all accused Blanchard of bullying them when they all worked together in different promotions. Blanchard, of course, being a third generation, now Blanchard has denied any of this happened. And of course, and I am most suspicious of Alison Kay's comment because Alison Kay claims that Tessa did this, and Tessa, of course, denied it. But we still, to this day, I don't think know who it was. I don't know if they ever revealed who it was who Tessa supposedly committed this assault on. Spat at and used racial slurs. I guess the quote victim of said assault, as it were, has not come out and said yes, she did this. Now, playing devil's advocate here for a moment, right? In regards to the claims made by Chelsea Green, Isla Dawn, and Gigi Dolan about the bullying, playing devil's advocate here, because again, Tessa's denied it. Tessa's denied any wrongdoing. Tessa said no, she didn't do any of this. So people are going to ask, well, she's denying it. They're saying it. Even though I know a lot of people want to just outright believe. Oh, listen and believe. Let's just blanketly, just blindly, just believe what they say. Even though there is the possibility that they could be lying. They could be outright lying for their own purposes. Okay, I'm not necessarily saying that. Again, just to make clear, I have no personal game in this. I don't know Tessa. I don't know the other women involved. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, giving an alternative point of view here. Tessa Blanchard is a third generation wrestler. She's the daughter of Tully Blanchard. She's a stepdaughter of Magnum TA. She's the granddaughter of Joe Blanchard. Now, I know most fans nowadays wouldn't know who Joe Blanchard is. Joe Blanchard was a wrestler / promoter out of Texas. Of course, he's also Tully's dad. Okay. So she's another third generation, star. She's somebody who had a lot of star power. She's actually pretty successful in TNA. She was considered one of the top stars before all that went down. And in the time since, apparently there was some time there between after she left and I guess 2002 for 2 years there where she wasn't doing much, hadn't heard much about, and then supposedly she when Women of Wrestling started up again in 2002, they brought her in to try to build supposedly some stuff happened. There were some attitude issues there. And then, of course, since I think October of last year, she'd been working in CMLL. And of course, we haven't heard of any other aside from what we heard 5 years ago. We haven't, as far as I know, and aside from the thing with WOW, we haven't heard anything negative about, as far as I know. And TNA and Anthem had been in talks with her. I'm sure these allegations came up. And, maybe the executive, because apparently, even though some of the women talent, not just in TNA, but even in WWE, just cannot believe that they signed her. But apparently the orders came from above. Jordan Grace has even said she's not willing to work with her. She doesn't want to work with her. She's made that apparently clear. But considering that Jordan Grace is on her way out anyway, she might have to. But people deserve a chance at redemption. If Tessa did something wrong, I can understand. Okay, after the incidents happened, maybe she needs to step away. Maybe she needs to deal with some issues. But again, she denied that she did not any wrongdoing. And I am most suspicious, of course, of Alison Kay's comments because one, the person in question, the person who I guess was the victim of this alleged assault, of being spat on and having racial slurs at them, to my knowledge, anyways. And if anybody knows anything different, you can, please correct me. We don't know who specifically it was, who was a supposed victim of this, because they themselves have not come out and said, yes, Tessa did this. Now, it's possible that even if Tessa did this, if there was some issue between those two wrestlers, maybe the two of them did settle it, between them. And if that's the case, then my next comment here is going to be even doubly important, because the idea, okay, so whenever you add the word ism onto a word, like racism, like sexism, whenever you add that ism onto something, right, or ist onto something like racist or sexist, right? The general meaning of ism or ist is meaning that one set of group of people is supposedly better or worse, superior or inferior to another group of people, right? When you say that you're racist against blacks, it basically means that you believe black people are lesser people than you are. That's wrong. Okay, that is wrong. To have the whole concept is wrong. Not just acting on it or saying anything about it, but just that mindset is wrong. Okay. However, let me make a little point here. Racism, sexism, any ist or ism can take any form, take multiple forms. Most of the time, it's usually taken in the most obvious form when somebody's like either hurling a racial insult at somebody, maybe they're assaulting or trying to physically harm them, or just denying them services. Those are obvious forms of racism and are wrong. But another kind of more subtle form of racism that is just as wrong, and maybe even in some cases even more damaging, is a form of a subtle racism where you believe you have to come out and speak for somebody else on something. This is the issue I have with Alison Kay's comment. We haven't heard anything from the person who supposedly this happened to, as far as I know. We, to this day, 5 years later, don't know who, if it did happen, and if it did actually happen, if Tessa Blanchard did sit there and spit at and use some kind of racial slur at somebody in Japan, we to this day do not know who it is, because they themselves have not come out and said that yes, this did happen. If it did happen, the individual, I don't believe, needs Allison Kay to come out and tell everybody that it happened. The fact that Allison Kay decided to bring this out into the open on her own, maybe without consideration to the to the person involved, is, I would call that suspect. Because it's like she's basically telling the world, well, the person's not going to come out and say it, but I will, because I just feel I have to. I have to be the white knight here. I guess you can call it the white knight syndrome, right? The white knight syndrome, where you have to come out and you have to speak for other people because you believe they can't speak for themselves. Now, granted, advocacy is one thing, and yes, we do. People need to advocate for one another, but you don't need to full on speak for them. That's the issue I have with Allison's statement, is that she's apparently speaking for the person who this supposedly happened to. If the person who supposedly this happened to wanted to talk about it, she would have. Allison doesn't need to be a white knight here in this situation. And she may not know the whole story either. Maybe, as I said, maybe the reason, maybe if it did happen, maybe Tessa and whoever the supposed, the alleged victim was of this assault, maybe they hashed it out between them. And maybe she doesn't have it. Maybe she doesn't have an issue with Tessa, or she doesn't even have an issue with what Tessa posted. But Allison does. Which goes to another aspect of another part of, again, in playing devil's advocate here. Here's another thing to take into consideration in measuring these accusations as well, right? As I said, Tessa Blanchard is considered a very talented performer. Okay. She's also, she is the daughter of Tully Blanchard, the stepdaughter of Magnum TA, and the granddaughter of Joe Blanchard. So she's got a bit of a wrestling pedigree, as it were. She's a bit of a legacy. Now, for some of these others who don't have those same connections, like Allison Kay, like Chelsea Green, like Isla Dawn, like Gigi Dolan, maybe they feel that, maybe because she's a legacy, maybe she gets opportunities that they wouldn't get. Maybe they see her as being somebody who can just cut into the line, and maybe by just completely trying to trash her reputation, maybe that might open the doors for them. It's kind of a very cynical and nasty way of looking at things, but it does happen, unfortunately. Now, again, I wasn't following wrestling as closely like 5 years ago as I am right now, or as I did before, earlier in my life. So I don't know, but based on what I've heard, what it sounds like is people should just relax and let Tessa be. If Anthem felt that, she was worth the risk. I may not necessarily agree with everything Anthem did. Like, I don't agree with Anthem letting Scott D'Amore go. But so they've done well for themselves without him there, which is fine. You know, um, but and think about it too, having 5 years. So she's 29 now, 25 then. You know, there is a chance she could have also matured a little bit in that time. Maybe earlier in her career, she may have been a little rough around the edges, personality wise. But does that mean that you know, it's the whole idea of once you've committed these quote unquote deadly sins, then you just you know once you said a racial slur, oh, there is no forgiveness, there is no redemption. That's just stupid. People can't, um, well, a lot of times they usually don't. People can change, you know. But again and again, she's been with CMLL since October, I think, of 2023. They even had the tag titles on her. Of course, they had to vacate because of this. But Anthem apparently been in talks with her for a while. So, and I saw a number of commentators saying, "Oh, this is a big mistake. This is wrong. This is that." The thing is that yeah, she was accused, but nobody's really offered any solid proof. First off, second off, you know, Tessa herself has denied it. You know, unless you've got like some physical, like some form of physical evidence, like a photograph or a video of her actually doing this. All it is it's just pretty much um, it's just pretty much her word against her word in this case. You know, Tessa's word against the other three. Some people would say, well, all three of them said this. Yeah, all four of them made made accusations. And why I know everybody, because of the fact, oh, she was accused of bullying, everybody wants to believe, oh, three people came out and said she bullied them, and one said she bullied and used racial slurs towards another. Therefore it must be, even though in that one case where in Allison Kay's case, as I said, I find that a little suspect that the person who this actually happened to didn't come out and say it. If Allison Kay felt the need to say it for her, she's basically she's the true racist in that situation. She's the true racist in that situation because she's basically telling everybody that that she doesn't believe that the person that it happened to is apparently capable of coming out and speaking for herself. And that's just as racist as what she's accusing Tessa of doing. Just some stuff to think about, people. Don't just automatically assume everything you hear is 100% true. Think about it. Meditate on it. Consider alternate situations. Dropping a lot. Well, thank you, Bone. Do appreciate that. Um, hopefully that helps somewhat. um, So, anyways, with that, now we're going to continue on with the wrestling round. I just had a lot to say on that one particular issue because I saw a lot of that and saw a lot of the coverage on it and just felt, that somebody needed to come out and give a counterpoint to that. But anyways, let's now get back. So we're gonna move ahead to Saturday. There's a couple major things happening. Of course, WWE had its Saturday night's main event, and then AEW had, and we're going to start with the AEW because now it's just the Collision show. But on this past Saturday's Collision show, as part of the Winners Coming that stuff, they were from the Chavez Arena in St. Louis. Sorry, the show opened up with the final match for the AEW's version of the qualifier for the Wrestle Destiny International Women's Cup qualifier. Willow Nightingale defeated Jamie Hayter and will be going to Japan on January the 5th to represent AEW in the 4-woman tournament. Athena is going there representing Ring of Honor, and I know Persephone is going there representing CMLL, and I think New Japan will also have, but those four women there will be seeing who will come out of the International Women's Cup tournament there. In Continental Classic action, Kazuchika Okada defeated Beast Mortos in a non-title Blue League match. And also main eventing, Mark Briscoe dealt Kyle Fletcher his first loss in the Blue League, earning another 3 points. And now he's mathematically still in it. And then in some other matchups, of course, Tony Storm defeated Shazza McKenzie in just under 2 minutes. Tony Storm, they've been going with an angle here where she's apparently has some form of amnesia of the last couple of years she's had in AEW, as she's apparently abandoned the timeless gimmick and gone back to her original Tony Storm gimmick. But the only thing is that she's going around introducing herself to everybody as if she was just signed for the very first time. It seems to be it does seem to be a bit of an interesting angle to go with here. Her acting like she has some form of amnesia. I'll just have to see how it all plays out. And also in a tag match, it determined the number one, basically determined Private Party's next opponents, due to happen at World's End, the end of the month here. Action Andretti and Leo Rush defeated former friends, Top Flight, the Martin brothers, Darius and Dante Martin, getting the win on them to get a chance to challenge Private Party for the AEW World Tag Team title. Chris Statlander, looking to get back on track, defeated Tootie Lynn just under 2 minutes. And in a 10-man tag match, the Outrunners, teaming with Daniel Garcia, Orange Cassidy, and Commander, defeated the 5 men of the 3 members of the Premier Athletes of Artie Davari, Tony Nese, and Josh Woods, and the M&M collection of Mansoor and Mason Madden. So that happened, as they continue to prepare for World's End, which I believe might be next week, I believe. But anyways, also now going back to Saturday for a moment. So now going to go talk about what happened on the first Saturday night's main event to have that WWE has produced since 2008. Go back to look at that here with Jesse Ventura, of course, on commentary for the main event. And Pat McAfee also making his return. The opening match saw Drew McIntyre defeat Sami Zayn. Liv Morgan retained the WWE Women's World Title over Io Sky. This is pretty much a by the book kind of event. There's only one thing that kind of happened, in terms of a title change or anything like that. Liv Morgan retained over Io Sky for the Women's World Title, and then was confronted afterwards by Rhea Ripley. Gunther retained the World Heavyweight Title in a triple threat match against Damian Priest and Finn Balor. Chelsea Green became the first ever women's United States Championship in the tournament final with the help of Piper Niven, defeating Michin. And Cody Rhodes retained the undisputed title against Kevin Owens in what some people are calling a controversial finish. And as Kevin Owens had brought a chair into the ring to use on Cody, only for Cody to end up using it on him by executing the crossroads on him. Now, after the match ended, Owens attacked Rhodes and injured him, and then was confronted by Triple H afterwards. So we'll see how all that plays out. Now, of course, moving ahead here to tonight, WWE will be having its Monday Night Raw event tonight as they continue to prepare for Raw's premiere on Netflix in another couple weeks here. As they've been taping shows, they tape 2 shows so that people can go on holiday. So people aren't working next week. They're taping, they taped 2 episodes of SmackDown last week, and they're taping 2 episodes of Raw tonight. From the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, tonight's SmackDown has a Judgment Day Finn Balor and JD McDonough defending the World Tag Team titles against Eric and Ivar, the War Raiders. And then Braun Breaker defending the Intercontinental title against Ludwig Kaiser. So that's all going down on Monday Night Raw. Now, a little bit of other news here. Some Ring of Honor news. As this Friday, Ring of Honor will be having their Final Battle pay-per-view event. And we'll get to that in a moment here. The Ring of Honor event, which will be coming up, as I said, this Friday from the Hammerstein Ballroom, New York City, a very famous venue. The slated main event will see Athena defending the women's world title against Billie Starkz. Chris Jericho defends the Ring of Honor world title against Matt Cardona, always ready Matt Cardona, in a tag team Texas bull rope match. The Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions, the Sons of Texas, Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes, take on the Righteous of Dutch and Vincent. As Dutch and Vincent have been looking to, been trying to play mind games with the Sons of Texas, trying to get under their skin to make them more vulnerable to dropping the titles to them. In a survival of the fittest 6-way elimination match, the Ring of Honor World Television title will be on the line as Brian Cage will be defending against Willie Mack, A.R. Fox, Mark Davis, Commander, and Blake Christian. In a match for the women's world television title, Red Velvet defends against Layla Hirsch. Lee Moriarty is set to defend the Pure title. The opponent is yet to be announced, and then the show will open up with Jay Lethal taking on QT Marshall. So that's what's going on this Friday's. So as I said, that's all I got for the wrestling wrap up. We're taking a little more time with the wrestling wrap up just due to the fact that that we had that one story to go over with Tessa Blanchard. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run through this day in each hit. Today is Monday. Hey, Rick. Thanks for popping in. And I know I'll have Rick with me this Sunday. We'll be going through Fawcett Comics from April of 1940. That'll be part of the show on Sunday. So with that, so today is Monday, December 16th, 2024. So let's take a look back at this day in each history. So let me just take a quick peek at a few things here. 98, 2019, let's see, 2004, and 1994. All right, so first off, I want to head back 30 years ago. And on this date, 30 years ago today, back in 1994, Studio Pierrot's OVA, Key the Metal Idol, was released on this date back in 1994. On the date in 1994, the first episode of Key the Metal Idol was released, as it saw the central character of the story is Tokiko Mima, nicknamed Key, who believes herself to be a robot crafted by her scientist grandfather, Narao Mima. Every year on her birthday, Key believes Dr. Mima builds her a new body, each one size larger. Upon his deathbed, Mima records his will on audio tape, revealing that Key can become human with the aid of 30,000 friends. Key believes she must do this quickly before her battery runs down, and attempts to gain the amount of friends by becoming a Japanese idol. The series details a slow unraveling of Key's identity and a secret conspiracy bent on controlling her unique supernatural abilities she develops over the course of the narrative. All right, so the first episode of Studio Pierrot's OVA, Key of the Metal Idol, was released on this date back in 1994, 30 years ago today. Moving ahead to 1998. On this date in 1998, which is of course 26 years ago today. 26 years. The 25th and final issue of Deviate from Image's Wildstorm imprint went on sale on this date back in 1998. So for $250 and 32 pages. On this date, 26 years ago today, the 25th and final issue of Deviate from Image's Wildstorm imprint went on sale on this date back in 1998. Moving ahead to 2004, on this date in 2004, as I find it here. On this date in 2004, Comedy Central's Shorties Watching Shorties completed its run, aired its last episode on this date back in 2004, 20 years ago today. It was an adult animated comedy television series that aired on Comedy Central from April 28th to December 16th. The show is made up of various short animated clips with audio from comedians' stand-up routines. So, On this date in 2004, 20 years ago today, Shorties Watching Shorties would air its final episode. And finally, moving ahead to 2019, which was 5 years ago today. On this date, 5 years ago today, we move ahead to that. The night after TLC 2019, from the Wells Fargo Arena in Des Moines, Iowa, WWE held its Monday Night Raw event. On the show saw in the main event Randy Orton defeat AJ Styles. Asuka defeated Deonna Purrazzo, who is now in AEW. In a number one contenders gauntlet match ended in a no contest as Kira Tozawa between Humberto Carrillo, R-Truth. It is a number one contendership for the United States in a no contest between Humberto, R-Truth, Akira Tozawa, Matt Hardy, Ricochet, and Andrade. Akira Tozawa eliminated R-Truth. Ricochet eliminated Akira Tozawa. Ricochet eliminated Matt Hardy, and Humberto Carrillo eliminated Ricochet. The show opened up with the OC of Carl Anderson, Luke Gallows defeating the Viking Raiders, Eric and Ivar. So that's all I have for you guys tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. The wrestling wrap up was a little bit longer than usual because, as I said, we did have that one story to go over with Tessa Blanchard. But with that being said, I hope everybody enjoyed the show, and so we'll be back here tomorrow night with more Neach News. Also, as I said earlier, just a few minutes ago, Rick will be joining me on Sunday. We'll be going back in time to March 1940. We'll be looking at comics went on sale in the from Fawcett Comics. So likely meaning we'll be reading some Captain Marvel, the original Captain Marvel. So with that, I hope everybody enjoyed the show, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.